Colin.
Yes.
What's your topic?
So let's go back. Let's step back about a month and a half.
I'm going to step
maybe
back
a little
month and a
less.
half ago. Was that like...
I was
September.
I was in Japan.
Yeah. Konnichiwa.
Konnichiwa.
Arigato
Yes.
gozaimasu.
Sumimasen.
Sumimasen. You're standing on my foot.
Arigato. We launched our Patreon when I was in Japan.
Yeah.
And it was a rousing success. It surprised us all very much. We're very honored by that. And so, one of these things I think I anticipate, right? I think I'm pretty good at anticipating problems or things people are going to say, things that are good. And one of the things I didn't anticipate when we launched the Patreon was that people were going to come to me specifically and say, "Why do you support Patreon but you don't support Kickstarter?"
Yeah, you're not a big fan of Kickstarter.
You've been an outspoken advocate about burning Kickstarter to the ground.
No, that's not true.
Okay.
In fact, there was an episode of the GameOverGreggy show this summer where I talked about how I might have been, after Shovel Knight, how I might be wrong about Kickstarter, how it's facilitating.
But
generally, generally I stick by it. I think generally it's a little weird, it's a little abused, and it's a little kind of overdone now. I think we're seeing that a lot. A lot of games aren't being funded, for instance. Games that would have been easily funded 2 years ago. And so I wanted to not only explain for me why Patreon and Kickstarter are very different, and kind of give people a look behind the curtain in terms of how we settled on Patreon, but also kind of get your guys' opinions on why Patreon works for you and how maybe it's different for Kickstarter for you, even though I don't think the three of you have a problem with Kickstarter anyway. Because I think this is an important conversation, because I've been meaning to talk about this, and I talked about it a little bit with people on Twitter at the time, and then we kind of forgot. And
well, that was the thing. People, of course, on Twitter will tweet me and be like, "How can Colin like this?" I'm like, "Well, he actually tweeted about this a day and a half ago," which means no one can see it. It's buried. Exactly. You'll never see it again. Yeah.
So here's where I'm coming from with this, and this is I wanted people to explain this. Maybe you guys can tell me what you think. When we were at VidCon this year in Anaheim, we started talking about how can we grow our channel at the time, which was GameOverGreggy. It wasn't Kind of Funny yet. We hadn't settled on that name before Tim came up with it. And we talked a little bit about, like, well, could we kickstart something? Like, could we do something? Like, is that possible? And that was something that I kind of personally was like, I'm not comfortable with that. Mm-hmm. In fact, I went as far in a conversation with Tim to say, like, if that was something you guys were going to do, I want to make it clear that I'm not going to take personal money from that, because I don't believe that I want to do that. And we stepped away from it, and we kind of regrouped, and this thing Patreon was kind of like coming.
Who we met at VidCon.
Yeah, exactly. This thing Patreon was kind of brought to our attention. We came to it, and I was like, well, explain it to me. What is Patreon? How does it work? And what I loved about it, and what I gravitated towards it was it's a subscription service. And that's always kind of the way I looked at it. So when people look at it as crowdfunding, I guess technically it probably is, but it's actually like a monthly subscription that you can get in or out of immediately, and that you get things for immediately or as soon as we can possibly deliver them. So in other words, it's not like a lump sum of $50,000 or $100,000, and we're like, in 2 years we're going to give you a game, or in 6 months we're going to give you a podcast. It's more like, on this, you can subscribe if you like us, and we're going to give you something immediately. So like today we did our Google Hangout. We have different perks and different thank yous and all those kinds of things, and we were making new shows. We just filmed one of 2 new shows. And what I really liked about it was the rapidity in which you could deliver to people and give them what they want and see if they want to keep doing it or not. Mm-hmm. And if not, they can withdraw, and I'd be totally comfortable with that, because I want them to get something immediately and feel like they're getting bang for their buck. If not, get out. You don't have to wait. There's no question that you're going to get what you want. So to me, Patreon ended up being a subscription. Subscribe to Kind of Funny, and so that's kind of where I stand with it, and I wanted to kind of explain that and see where you guys stand with it as well, because to me, I think it's a really ingenious service in the sense that it gives people unfettered access to the people that they want content from pretty much immediately. At least that's the way I look at it as well.
For me, it's the exact same thing minus a lot of nudity to what HBO is doing, right? And a lot of companies are starting to follow suit.
We can give them the nudity.
Yeah. This, all right, that's not quite as sexy as True Blood.
Yeah, like Khaleesi.
Okay. You're not really doing it for me like the Mother of Dragons here.
Okay.
All right. Okay. He's a warm one.
Only a beer and a half in.
Wow. Well, keep drinking. Let's get through it. You can't go back. You got to just go through. This is the way the world is going, right? We're
on demand.
It's not necessarily, the democratization of content, but it's getting there to the point where you don't have to have your experiences chosen for you. Now, for the first time, we have the tools to, as consumers or as people who want to view content, we get to choose a la carte which pieces of content we want to program for ourselves. Yeah. And it's huge. This is an insanely powerful time for content creators and audiences alike, largely because tell me 10 channels. List 10 channels right now on basic cable that you watch regularly.
I don't watch TV.
Exactly, right? Like, not a lot of people can. And even if you can, I don't even think I can name 10 channels other than HBO, maybe Showtime, Encore,
AMC.
Well, there's MTV,
AMC.
MTV2, MTV3.
You watch 3 MTVs? No, you don't.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is I it's a rudimentary argument, but the concept is there's a lot of shows I don't watch, but yet I still have to subsidize. I still have to pay for because my cable bill is so damn expensive because the cable company has to be able to afford all those channels. So they have to charge us more in order to be able to keep those channels alive, and then those channels bear the burden of having to have 24-hour programming 7 days a week, and it's a nightmare. Now we've got services, and HBO is very much leading the way with this, but actually I give it to Netflix as the creator of all this because they're the ones the first people that made the subscription model really work. I don't know how. I've been a Netflix subscriber for maybe 2 or 3 years, and
really,
yeah, I've been for a while.
I thought that was short.
No. I was I'm a late adopter to everything. I'm always a late adopter. So I got on it because I was like, oh, this is a cool way to rent DVDs right as Blockbuster was dying. And then I realized quickly that, I could just wait a couple weeks and get the streaming. So I went streaming. And then I realized, of course, streaming on demand subscription content is the wave of the future. So I should just get used to it. And now I'm having that debate internally of, should I cut the cord? Every week, my wife and I kind of broach the subject of like, should we just get
the answer
internet?
Is yes now.
It is.
Entirely.
It is. But it's also amazing because everyone's doing this, and it's going to put probably mainstream media, a lot of these companies, out of business. Like a lot of the networks are going to have a hard time competing with people like us because we can give, soon hours of entertainment per week to people, whereas and we can give them exactly what they want. It doesn't cost us that much to do. It's just our time, and there's a genuine connection to our audience who can tweet at us and talk to us and come see us that you can't do that with a show like Blacklist. You can't do that with CBS or NBC. So to me, when you guys met the Patreon guys, I still have not met them, which is disappointing.
Good dudes.
They're good people from
Good folks. What up, Tyler?
And you started talking to me about this. I was like, wow, this is something really powerful and really cool. And to Colin's point, being able to offer people value above and beyond what you can normally offer them with your normal distribution outlet like YouTube. Like with Patreon, we have the ability to give people stuff early, and like right when it's done, we can give it to them and see how they're going to react to it, and get that feedback from them, and have that community grow there. Where it's so we can grow there, we can grow YouTube, we can grow all sorts of places. It's really really.
That's
cool.
the big thing for me is the instant feedback. Is what you're talking about, right? And the difference between Kickstarter. Today I got an update on a Kickstarter I funded or whatever, right? And it's like, oh right, I didn't even remember I was doing that.
I forgot about that.
Whereas Patreon, I try to have every few days, because people were telling me I was posting too much on the wall. Every few days, contact, right? Or like today we did the stream. I immediately posted, what did you think of the stream? Tell me how to make it better, right? And they give us that feedback to make it immediately better. Yeah. Whereas, Kickstarter, you can fund a game 2 years from now, you get the game, you're like, this sucks, and I can't do anything about it. Whereas like now, it's like, well, I always like it, just the fact that if we start fucking up, and we start, we've promised these milestones, there's these perks, we start missing those things and we alienate you leave right away.
Exactly,
you know what I mean? Like, you can get out early.
You have that power, yeah. I like Kickstarter. Colin and I, you and I have had opposing views on this, and you're coming around, and I'm sort of coming the opposite way with it. But I do, for that same reason of like, I backed a movie called Kung Fury, and I really want to see this thing happen, but it's been a year now, and I'm like, oh, I forgot that thing is still a thing. I'm not necessarily as fired up as I will be for it when it actually comes out eventually. But for me, it's really about being able to go out there and support. Like, it's a weird thing to say, but there's no middleman anymore. I don't have to deal with a Hollywood studio or a television network or a production company or any of that stuff. If I have a cool idea and it's good enough on its own merit to warrant other people coming out to support it, well, I have that tool now. And that's either going to be Kickstarter, Indiegogo, or Patreon. And as a person who has one day an aspiration to make, a 2-hour-long feature film, like, I hope those things stick around. I hope they even grow more.
Yeah, they will.
All this other crap of, the studios having to make, a horror film because horror is big right now and all that stuff can just go away. It can just go away.
But now back to what you're talking about, which is kind of off the topic a bit. It's interesting you were talking about games, right, and how some games aren't even getting funded now. Patreon's an interesting thing, just in the fact that we're able to appeal to our audience, and our hardest of hardcore fans can come and support us and take care of us, right? But then you are seeing Kickstarter's not getting funded. I pulled up the Indiegogo for Hot Mess Moves, an amazing YouTube channel we all love. We love those two girls. They do amazing content, but they're trying to raise $30,000, right? And they have 8 days left right now, which means by the time you see this, one day, right? They'd have 2 days left, because this will go live on Monday, and then it's 2 days left. but they're only at right now at a little over $11,000, and it's like that should be a slam dunk. They make such amazing
Yeah, they're
content. You know what I
fucking
mean? They're
funny
hilarious.
as
They're
shit.
they're not
And
kind
they're
of funny.
girls,
They're
so-
very funny.
Yeah.
They're girls, so by definition, they're much more fun to look at than we are. Unfortunately,
By definition.
sadly for us.
You're such a weirdo.
I know.
Yeah. So I mean, but that's what we're saying. Like so many people are using crowdfunding now and doing all these different
Yeah,
things.
and
That it's an interesting thing.
Well, go ahead, Tim. You haven't chimed in yet.
Oh, well, just my thoughts on it are, I think crowdfunding isn't inherently a bad thing. I think actually
No, it's an amazing
it's a great thing. I think that you're spot on about the subscription aspect of Patreon. That makes it different than Kickstarter. I do think it is crowdfunding because it is what it is.
Well, it is.
But I look at Patreon as a subscription service. I look at Kickstarter as just buying stuff. I've said this before, but for
Pre-ordering
me,
stuff, basically.
it's pre-ordering. Yeah. So it's like I buy a lot of music off of Kickstarter, albums that they just need help making. You know, it's like they just don't have the money to ship it and do all that stuff, so they need the money to be able to do all that. So I'm just pre-ordering something that I'm gonna buy. Maybe get a T-shirt, maybe get some like the extra perks. Just kind of like, I found that because they're using Kickstarter, now I'm not just getting a CD. I'm also getting a bunch of like a behind-the-scenes DVD,
Yeah,
and
digital
like
stuff,
all this like
yeah.
extra random shit.
Cool stuff, yeah.
That's just like cool. I wouldn't have had this otherwise, and like I like that stuff. And if it's people I support, I want more dumb little trinkets and shit. I was just showing Greg this group I like, Cunning Linguists. They put out a
What's
new
their name?
album, Cunning Linguists.
That's very nice.
Yeah, they're really embarrassed by it because it made sense in 2001. Now they're just like, God, we're old, and this isn't.
We have
as
kids
cute
and
anymore.
grandkids.
Yeah,
We have kids and grandkids.
and but anyway, so they released a new mixtape, and it's on CD. Also comes on vinyl. Also comes on cassette.
Yeah.
And that was just a Kickstarter type
How do
bonus.
you even make a cassette these
You
days?
can. And it's
Where do you
awesome.
find that vendor that'll make you a cassette?
And
Because
things
the
like that
Guardians
just-
of the Galaxy just
they're
said, you were talking
coming
about
up,
that,
yeah.
where they're going to release a soundtrack on a cassette. And that blows me away because I was like, you would have to literally find the one vendor in the world that can still make a cassette. And obviously they're not expecting people to listen to this cassette unless you have an old 88 Honda Civic like I used to have that had his cassette player in it. I can't even say the word cassette. That's how old it is.
Yeah,
I can't
it's
even
weird.
get it out of my tongue.
Recently,
Sorry, continue.
I saw someone tweet a picture of a bunch of Disney VHS tapes. And she's like, oh, man, look at all my old VCRs. Or no, VCR tapes. I'm like, oh, God.
Yeah, that's
Wow.
It's been a while, hasn't
Yeah,
it?
Yeah,
you don't even know what
okay.
to call them anymore.
Yeah, but with the Kickstarter and Indiegogo versus Patreon, they are similar things, but they have very different uses.
Right.
And I think that, yeah, Patreon is a subscription thing. But it's like, that's just because that's what we made of it. You know, and that's kind of the
But
same
a lot
with
of people do that
Kickstarter.
too. I mean,
It's-
like that's the
no, a
whole
lot
thing.
of people
Patreon's
do.
whole thing is like support artists making art, right,
Yep.
or whatever.
But it's like, what I'm saying is, it's kind of not, is Kickstarter good or bad? It's really, how is each individual using it?
Yeah,
You know?
yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it was funny because, like I said, I didn't anticipate it because I thought it was so obvious how they were different in my mind because that was just an assumption I made. And so I wanted to just talk to people about it and see like how you guys felt about it because the big thing I remember when we were talking about it was I was like, what is this? Can you explain it to me? And is anyone gonna not get something because of this? Because we give away our shows for free, you know?
Yeah.
And what I loved about it was why they get diverges from Kickstarter so significantly is Kickstarter's like there's nothing, and we're gonna give you something.
Yeah.
And for us, because like you're saying, it is what we make it. Patreon is we are going to do this anyway, and you just let us do
Sure.
more of it and
you
give
get
it
it
to you in
earlier.
different ways
Yeah.
and give it to you early or whatever. But it's still there if you don't want to support us. And that was like one of the things that was really important was like I don't want anything to change. I want nothing to change for the people that don't support us. And that was what Patreon allowed us to do. So that's why I was really excited about it. I'm like, this is a great idea because it gives us the impetus, obviously, to make new shows and new content and give you guys things in cool and new and creative ways, but also doesn't stop us from hitting the people that maybe are more casual fans, or maybe they just don't have the money to pay for us, but they like our content. Like
Well,
they don't suffer, and that was so essential to me. So that was why I was so excited about Patreon because I was like, this is something that my partners want to do. It hits all the notes for me perfectly. It's crowdfunding in its own way, which I've had some bad things to say about, but at the same time, it's no different to me than Amazon Prime or Netflix, and that's what I like that if you don't like what you're getting, I accept that you can get out and you don't really lose anything.
You got it, you still get our content.
Right, exactly. So it's cool. So I want to explain that and also get and thank everyone, of course, out there for supporting us, but. Also voice that because I've been meaning to do that for like 2 months. So I'm sorry that this topic came so late. It's not timely really at all anymore. But just kind of express that to people and see what you guys thought about it because I'm super excited about the Patreon model because I think it's just cool. It's just a cool way to subscribe to Kind of Funny.
It's an ingenious model, A, and B, it's very empowering on both sides. It really is. Yeah. For us, it keeps us on. It's also got built-in functionality like that we have actually installed to keep us honest, to make sure that we're putting out more content. And just from a perspective, like an artistic perspective, it helps us constantly rethink of what the next thing we want to do is, which is really, really cool. That's something that's actually hard, that I think we've had a little bit of trouble dealing with in the last couple of years of doing these shows, is because even to get to the stage where we do this podcast was like I think we wouldn't have gotten there. Well, how am I phrasing this? Let me see.
You're very important. We understand.
No, I'm not very important. You're more important than all of us. We already voted, and you got that title for now. No, but rolling out this podcast, for instance, right, should have happened a long time ago. But we didn't have the time or the energy or the inclination to do so. So now that we're on Patreon and looking at, we have to do 2 new shows. It's cool for me, because it forces us to get in a room, get a Starbucks coffee or something, and just start floating around fun ideas and figuring out what's available to us.
If it's not publicly shared, there's so like the live event. I'm still moving behind the scenes. I'm making that happen. But if it was just like, we should do a live event, we said that at lunch.
Would never happen.
6 months later, we'd be like, we should do a live event. Really, you know what I mean? Like, it would just keep going. Now it's like, I got to make sure I'm sharing it on Patreon and telling people.
It all provides the impetus, because at the end of the day, we don't want to let you down. And I think unlike Kickstarter, we don't want to let you down in 2 years.
Yeah.
We don't want to let you down.
We don't want to slowly drag you
now. We don't want to let you down.
What are your thoughts on, did you see the guy that got paid like $80,000 to make potato salad?
Yeah. It's funny. I mean,
awesome.
he was making a point. And like he made.
Well, now he has to make a lot of shit.
He's got to make a lot.
Well, he already
of
did it. I thought he already did the potato salad like festival or whatever they were talking about.
I don't know how that went.
It was a
but
funny.
I just know he had to make a bunch of T-shirts and hats, and supposedly he was like, "Fuck."
It's funny because
like a direct quote.
When we reached out to for comment, Mr. Thomas said, "Fuck."
It sounded oddly enough like a Greg Miller fart.
It's funny because I think that whole thing was obviously a commentary gone awry.
It definitely was.
But yeah, so I just wanted to kind of express that to our people out there and let them know where we're coming from. And I'm sorry again that it took us so long to answer that. I've been meaning to do it actually since I got back from Japan. It just kind of slipped through the cracks. But yeah, like I'm so excited about Patreon, and I think what we have going on there is special, and I love that it's forcing us to do new and unique things. We just filmed one of our new shows this past weekend, and we're gonna keep doing them, and we're gonna keep giving you guys new and cool things on Patreon to see what you guys think and how you guys want to respond to those things, and we're gonna keep on going with that. So thank you, and I hope that makes sense to some. I think most people got where I was coming from originally, but for the people that questioned that or whatever, I hope that answers your question.